My void will consume you, if you ask nicely.
Your will is no longer your own.
Stay away from the hood. To arms!
You have led the Horde to a place without honor.
Your petty quarrels only make me stronger.
Our world needs us, champion.
You got you over your head.
We cannot let the world fall to darkness.
Already lost.
Put your faith in the light, and all is possible.
Is it truly righteousness that drives you? I wonder.
It would seem you have guessed.
They are coming for you. This is the Whispers of War.
Hello everyone and welcome to Whispers of War, show number 93. I'm your host Sil, and let's just jump into how was my week in Warcraft. Actually, what I first should say is sorry that the show is a little bit late. I had every intention of releasing it either on the Sunday or the Monday, but I've been feeling very poorly. So much so that my other half had to run and do everything for me, including feeding the cat, which she was very confused about. That's how often he does that. Not that he doesn't want to, but, you know, pets are my responsibility. So, yeah, I didn't manage to do much at all for those 2 days. And it actually started on Saturday, and I never record on Saturday, so I thought, yeah, this is not going to go well. But I'm doing it now. So, yeah, your show will be a little bit later than normal. I'm not going to try and make this a habit though. Anyhow, I did do some stuff in World of Warcraft before I was flat on my back for the weekend. Which means the baby paladin. She's now level 112, and I am really not enjoying Battle for Azeroth content. I know that I can do time walking, but I also don't really want to be in a queue for a time walking, which I know is very like, well, you know, either or. I don't have much of a choice. But I want to get this one to 120 now. So I might just do some islands and, you know, I guess the war campaign. The war campaign will also give you a lot of experience. And I just prefer doing that. But on the other hand, I also thought, maybe I should start in Drustvar and just see how far I can get. The invasions, is that what they call the war invasions? They are good. Once I see one that's up, I will go to that zone and level a little bit. That actually helped a lot. I think that's how I got an entire level. So that's it for the baby paladin. Now I counted the characters that I have to level. And I need to, including this one, I have 13 characters that I preferably want to have up by release of Shadowlands. So, you know, depending on when that release is, because it could be September, October, November, December at the latest, I guess, then I have a few months. I won't be spending it, you know, not doing anything, so I guess I have to pull my finger out and really start to level, which I enjoy at times. There are certain areas I really enjoy, and there are certain areas I really don't enjoy. So I figured I'll just focus on one character and just continue doing that now. At least I can properly tick it off without, you know, constantly going, oh, I still have so many characters to level, even though all of them have gained 10 levels. You know, they're still not done. I stopped trying to get the cloak on my Demon Hunter, not because I don't enjoy it, I do, but there's no point at all at this point in time. I have these characters that need leveling from my point of view, so I'd rather focus on that than do the cloak, because we all know the fucking cloak takes forever to finish that quest line. Yeah, maybe if I'm really, really tired of leveling, it will be something I focus on. In that regard, I love the playstyle of the Demon Hunter. I don't really check class changes that much. I only check, like when I'm an alpha, I only check to see if I enjoy the class or not. And like many know, I fucking hate Boomkin now. But I I have to say that Demon Hunter, maybe I should try that out, because I really did enjoy playing it now in BFA. I have no idea if it gets changed a lot. A lot of people have said to me that they are. I don't know if this is true. So yeah, I'm still very much melee heavy. I think that will be definitely a class that I will pick. So far, I think it is still going to be the rogue. Other than that, no book release, guys. So actually today is the 14th. Book release. I know that some people even got the book way before, but there is no book release for us in the UK, which is I think a really weird thing on the retailers' side, because, you know, they all said, oh yeah, this is the date when the book will be released. Some of us only got notified like last week that the release date was going to be pushed back, and all of a sudden there were things on the screen that said, oh, there's no copies, no stock, or out of stock, or no idea when this is going to be in our stock, or anything like that. It was odd. And looking at Twitter, it's very interesting to see that a lot of people have complained about this. So a lot of people in the UK, New Zealand and Australia are being pushed for the release. And I didn't realize this was an issue last time this happened with Before the Storm. I don't know why. But this time I really wanted my book at release. And that didn't happen. So the weird thing is the UK is also not allowing hardbacks. There's no hardbacks at all for this book in this country. So I did what a Dutch Guildie suggested, and I just went to a Dutch website that also delivered to the UK, which I will come back to. I have to have a little rant about that. So I thought, okay, I'll order the book. It's a hard book, which, you know, it's nice. I like to have certain books in hardback. It would be a good investment, and I thought, oh, probably, you know, with conversion to euros and Great British pounds, it's not going to be that bad. That was until after I paid and I saw the total for shipping. They didn't warn at all for that. They all said about shipping, oh, it could be between £2.99 or £30. Thank God it was not 30, but I still had to pay 12 quid for shipping, which I think is a little bit extreme for a book. And I have no doubt that customs will fuck me over and go like, oh yeah, you need to pay taxes for that as well. So we want another tenner. If I'm lucky, it's only a tenner. So it's an expensive book, but you know what? I'm just hoping I'll get it before the 28th. Otherwise, I'll be really sad. Yeah, I'm basically hoping that this book will at least arrive here way before the 28th. Even though it's 2 weeks, I'm hoping that they'll send it, I don't know, sometime tomorrow, and I'll have it by the beginning or mid of next week, maybe in 7 days. So at least a week early. And it's not because I want it that badly, I do, but I just don't want to get spoiled by everyone on the internet. And it's really difficult for me to not be on the internet. Yeah, and like the groups of people I hang out with and everything, I know I will get spoiled, and I really want to read it myself. So I don't know. I just find it really weird that book releases in the world have to be staged, you know, staggered. I don't understand why an ebook can't be released at the same time, like in the UK as it can be in the USA. I don't know what the reason for that is. If someone out there who actually knows about stuff like that, please enlighten me, because for me it baffles me. So yeah, that was a bit of a shit start of the week as well. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to the book. You know, I've heard so far. I've heard people who've already went through the night and just read it and listened to it on audiobook. Yeah. I have good hopes for this book. And before people ask, I've tried everything. Kindle, Audible, you know, the smaller retailers, no one has it. It's just not here. It's not allowed in the UK before the 28th. So, yeah. Unless I do like a region thing for VPN for maybe the audiobook. But I don't want to go for all of that. You know, that's a lot of hassle. And it shouldn't really have to be like that. I don't get what's so horrible why the UK needs to have it later. I don't get it. This is one of those moments that I wish I would still live in Holland. So yeah, unfortunately, no books for me, not yet. For those of you out there who are reading, I hope that you're enjoying it. Something else that I hope that you will enjoy is the interview I did with the lovely Demi. So I will leave you with the interview now, and then afterwards I'll come back, and I've asked you the question on Twitter, which novel, except for this one, because this one didn't, Shadows Rising was not out yet, which novel you enjoyed the most. So I'll see you on the flip side. And with me today, I'm being joined by yet another brand new voice, and I'm so happy that she's finally here after I've butchered her name over and over in all the Twitter messages that she always sends. Welcome, Demi.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's lovely having you. And, luckily before the show we had a little bit of a chat. Luckily I didn't butcher your Twitter name too much, because I do have a tendency to do that.
You didn't at all. You did a very good job. And you knew, you recognised where the main chunk of the name came from. So that kind of helps with the pronunciation, and you did it great.
Well, I think my love for Greek mythology really helped with that. So
yes.
For people who are wondering, what is it? It's Demeter. So I thought, okay, yeah, know that. I think Lore Olympus also helps with that a little bit.
Oh, I love that webtoon series.
It's amazing.
Oh.
Honestly, if you haven't followed that, you're missing out. So
yeah. It's so good. It's she's gone on a break now, hasn't she, until August?
I think
I was just like, I've got to wait. But yeah, I love that series. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
It's I don't know. I love it. I love the almost simplicity of it, and yet something very familiar with seeing all the Greek gods and goddesses.
Yes.
It's amazing. Right. Enough about webtoons. All about you now. So, Demi, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do on the internet?
Well, I'm Demeter Noth, or Demi the DK, and I suppose I've been around the Warcraft community since just after Wrath launched. So I am the archetypal Wrath baby. Immediately rolled a Death Knight as soon as I could, and have mained one ever since. So I fit that stereotype perfectly. And then in autumn last year, I started streaming on Twitch. And by some kind of I don't quite know how it started, but I started connecting with other streamers on Twitter, and then podcast people on Twitter, and then through various ways I've got to know lots of different communities, and people all around the world. So people in America, people in Australia, people in Vietnam, and just all these various people who are playing World of Warcraft. And one of them, a guy called Bricko, who I know has been on your show already, approached me probably in, I want to say April or May.
Okay.
And asked if I would consider doing a podcast with him. And he said, he wasn't in any rush. He was thinking about this summer. And I said, oh, okay, well, I'll have a think about it. So I went and had a think about it. And then something a bit random happened. So I'm a massive Taliesin and Evertel fan, who I know you've also had on the show.
Yes.
And I'm also a big fan of Morally Grey, the Morally Grey podcast with Jin and Fia. And so Jin and Fia, if you happen to be a patron for Jin and Fia, they will read out your name at the end of their podcast episodes, and and everybody changes their names, and they get more and more immature and more filthy and more rude each episode. So I'd changed my name to be read out on their show. But Taliesin and I'm also a patron for Taliesin and Evertel, and they do a patron Q&A, and I thought, I can't have them reading out my really immature, obnoxious, talking about penises name on their Q&A. So I changed it back to Demeter Noth, and they answered my question on the Q&A, and I tweeted out saying that I'm so glad that you got to my name, that you answered my question, and that I didn't have my Morally Grey name on. and tagged Morally Grey in it. Well, then Taliesin and Nevertell's Twitter account went and followed the Morally Grey account, and Jin had a bit of a fanboy moment and messaged me and went, "Oh my god, they followed me!" And at that moment, I was like, this is amazing. I really like connecting people who are just having a wonderful time with World of Warcraft, and you know, talking about other people's stuff and supporting them and being a fangirl, really. So I then went back to Bricko and said, right, I do want to do a podcast. I don't want to go down the lore side, although I absolutely adore the lore, because I think there's a lot of other people doing very good lore podcasts. I'd like to do something about community and where the community is in WoW and how you connect with people. And this also comes off the back of a chat I had with Cyrub on his Scrubs versus the World podcast as well. And Bricko came back and said, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. So now, instead of streaming, we are launching our podcast in July, called The Third Faction, because we are neither Horde nor Alliance. So we are both in a mix. So we are the Third Faction. And yeah, we've got some guests booked on. In fact, I think we've got the first possibly 3 episodes booked.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm really excited because I get to like talk to all my favourite people and promote them and shout about it. So yeah, that's where I'm going to be. I'll still probably dip in and out of streaming just because I do enjoy doing it. But I was finding, especially with the COVID thing happening, my energy just like keeping my world together was enough. And then finding the energy to stream and to entertain people 3 nights a week just wasn't there. But doing a fortnightly podcast where essentially we're the hosts, so you bring somebody else in, they do all the talking, I do the editing, and yeah, it means I get to interview some really nice people and still have fun and not stress so much. So that's what we'll be doing. But right now, if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter and, you know, just at Demeternoth. Anywhere there is a Demeternoth, it's probably me.
But can we? Because I'm really curious about the podcast. Because some people might be like, oh, I'd love to like know more about it in the sense of I want to be a guest and things like that. So are you just going to interview podcasters, or are you like taking it like bigger when it comes to the Warcraft community?
Oh yeah, any you know, if you're a player in the World of Warcraft community, we want to talk to you. We want to know how you found the people that you play with, how you interact with the community. What does the community mean to you? Have you had? We will touch on stuff like how have you dealt with bad things in the community, because it's not all shiny and lovely. There are some darker aspects. But there are also stories of how people have overcome those darker aspects. And either, you know, I've got a couple of those, you know, and how have you moved on and still enjoyed the game? Maybe you've had to take a break or whatever it might be. But anything from anyone involved in the community of World of Warcraft. And that can be streamers, podcasters, players. Hey, we might even get devs and people on. Who knows? I don't know. You know, anything where you're involved in this, you know, it's a huge community. I mean, how many million people play the game still? You know, there's classic, there's retail, there's lore people, there's like people who do massive, like all the people that are focused on like the mechanics and the min-maxing stuff. I couldn't tell you anything about min-maxing. I am like Miss Casual. But those people have a following, they have a community, whether it's their 5 friends that they constantly run mythics with, you know, there are people that they talk to. I would be very surprised if there is a WoW player out there who has never spoken to anybody else in the community. Ever. You know, if they have never spoken to somebody else in the community, I would find that very strange. So everybody involved in the game has some opinion or some experience of this community. So yeah, absolutely, we'll talk to anyone. You know, not that we know, we're not to say that we're not picky, but you know, there's so many people to talk to and to, you know, learn through as well, and learn their experiences of the game. And
yeah, there's no threshold for anyone to go like, oh, I'm not good enough to come on for an interview or anything like that.
Oh God, no, we you know, we're not going to turn around and say, well, if you haven't got 1,000 followers on YouTube, we're not going to talk to you. I mean, no, that's not how, you know, Bricko and I certainly don't operate like that. We want to, you know, help people, showcase people. If they are new to the community, you know, we want to help them find the community as well. And a part of what we will talk about is, you know, how to find the community. Because there's been a very big shift, and I think it's been thrown into more stark contrast with Classic coming about. In vanilla or original WoW in quotation marks, you were very much dependent on that server, and if you were a dick, your name got around your server. And that is still very much the same. That's replicated quite well in Classic. It's not quite to the same level because we have all these other auxiliary means of contacting each other. But it's still there. Whereas now on retail, there's a lot of people saying that retail, there's no community on retail. You don't have to queue for groups. You don't have to wait for anything, so you don't get to know anybody. Whereas actually our argument is there is just as much community in retail. It's you have a different way of engaging with people, that's all. So, for example, I have a couple of the guys, Character Craft, Cuffy and Rig, they're both on my Battle.net friends. You know, I wouldn't have met them if I hadn't been talking on Twitter and then listened to their podcast. And then they invited me on, and then we became friends, and now they're on my, you know, that's another way of a community growing. There are people that I play with in Classic who I've never met, who I've only met through other streamers, and we've connected and we've started playing together. So there are a lot of ways to meet people outside of the game. I mean, even when, oh God, if we go all the way back, all the way back to sort of Wrath, my Twitter account that I use to this day, Demeternoth, was the reason she is my Warcraft character is I went there to find the Warcraft community on Twitter. You know, I have a work/personal one, and I don't use it anymore, but it's there under my IRL name. But, you know, I don't know, 11 years ago, I went onto Twitter, and the first people that I found on there were from the Warcraft community. And I am still friends with a lot of those people. And I've never met a lot of them because they're in the US. You know, but I still talk to them. We still talk about Warcraft. And that was an extension of the community that I had found on my server in the EU. And I then went on and found, well, in the end, there were people coming to our server to join our guild because I'd spoken to them on Twitter. Now, that was really freaky at the time, because I was like, you have no experience of this server or the people that you're joining, and you're just going to go off my tweets. But, you know, I'm still friends with those people too. So there is always community. Sometimes you might have to look a bit harder for it. And hopefully through the podcast, the Third Faction, I'm so excited. Hopefully through that we can help people find those communities and, you know, find one that suits them, because there's people like the Morally Grey guys where we are extremely immature and tell a lot of dick jokes and have a lot of fun. And then there's people like, who was the guy I was just thinking of? Oh, Mr. Griggsy, who's an Australian classic Warcraft streamer who has the most wholesome stream. It's adorable. And it's so lovely. And it's super chill, you know, and there's very little swearing. And it's just, he's just an absolute charming man to whose company you're essentially in when you're watching somebody stream, you know, and they're different communities. And that's absolutely fine. So there are ways to find those communities. without, whether that's in game or out of the game, and that's what we want to explore and to highlight, I think, more than anything.
I love it. And people can just contact you over Twitter to, throw themselves at you.
Yeah, you can either get me on at Demeternoth, Demeternoth, or I have set up this week the Third Faction Twitter, and that is the number 3, so 3RD as in Third Faction Show on Twitter. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the third because it was too long, and I think somebody else had already got it. So it's number 3RD Faction Show, and that's on Twitter. But you can just grab me or Bricko, who is Bricko Stud on Twitter, which is BRICCOSTUD. So you can find him there as well. But either or any of those. But yeah, feel free to shout at us because we'd love to have you on.
Okay, perfect. Right, let's talk a little bit more about World of Warcraft then.
Yeah.
So, what people want to know when you created your Death Knight and where you are now, Horde or Alliance?
I'm a blue baby.
Ah!
Yeah, I mean, you can see this on the camera that I have both faction icons behind me and a little order on one. I do have Horde characters, but I started on Alliance purely by fluke, really, and because that's where the people that I became friends with played, that's where I've always stayed. I do have some Horde characters, and I really want to level my Nightborn because she's so badass looking. But yeah, if you cut me in half, I'd probably bleed blue.
Fair enough. Okay, do you have a lot of alts, or do you really try to summarize it a little bit? Not me too.
Yeah, I have quite a few alts. Probably more so right now because of the Winds of Wisdom buff. I've leveled a lot more than I would have done in the past. Because and also I guess because I've had more time in game, I've been able to level some more alts. I mean, the DK is my go-to. She's the one that I run through the mythic dungeons. She's the one that gets leveled first. If I was still raiding, she'd be my raid character. But I also have a shadow priest that is now able to do mythic dungeons. She's terrible because I can't play her for toffee, but she's there. I have a rogue and a warrior. The warrior is my original character. They're both level capped. They don't get as much play, mainly because the people that I play with have a rogue and a warrior already in the rotation. So, but I'm leveling a Void Elf Mage right now, who I am loving. She's fantastic. I've got a Light Forged Priest who I've leveled exclusively in dungeons as a healer, with the view that with the other people that I normally play with, if I've got a bit more versatility in the characters that I can play with, then we've got a bit more of a mix. Because we seem to be very melee heavy. So one of our guys mainly plays a druid and a warrior. One of our other guys only plays a rogue. And then me on a Death Knight. One of our other guys, his preferred tank is a pally tank. So you put us all in the mix. And then a healer, and we've got no ranged, so it makes it can make things a bit difficult. So I just thought, well, I'll see what else I enjoy doing. So I have got a lot of alts. I've got a druid tank as well. So I'm just, I've got a warlock and a demon hunter at max level, but they don't get a lot of play. I leveled the mage because I fell out of love with the warlock, and then at really low, less around sort of. God, what are they? Less than 30. I've got a hunter. I've got a monk. I've got a Dark Iron Shaman that I've rolled purely for the fact that she looks amazing. And I've got a character name placeholder at the moment for when Shadowlands comes out. But I don't know what class that character will be. So yeah, I've got a few, and that doesn't even cover the other Death Knights that I've got. Because I've also got I've got 4 other Death Knights, 3 or 4 other Death Knights on Tarakar on my server, and then I've got at least another 3 on other servers, and that's because if I'm thinking about experiencing a different race or something, I'll roll a Death Knight because they start at a higher level. I love the Death Knight starting zone. I pre-ordered Shadowlands so that I could do the new Death Knight starting zone. So I put a lot of the allied races through that. And I haven't done a Lightforged Draenei Death Knight because I can't bring myself to do it. It feels wrong. But but yeah, so I've got a few Death Knights hovering around as well. And they're not necessarily characters that I will level. They're just characters that I explore the Death Knight lore on. So if I feel like there's something I've missed, I'll roll another Death Knight and go and do it again. Yeah, so I have a few alts, it's fair to say. Yes.
That, you know what? I'm not judging at all.
I'm relieved to hear that.
No, I think as many people know, I'm almost at my max of 50. So, yeah, no judgment at all. Right, let's jump into mains. I'm going to assume that your main is a Death Knight.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that Death Knight will be your main for Shadowlands?
Well, you see, this is a bit difficult. She will always be the character that I level first and that I experience the most of an expansion on at the beginning of the expansion. But when it comes to experiencing those covenants, like in my head, I have headcanon for all of my characters. And I know that some of my characters will go through will choose different covenants because of the headcanon I have. And it may well be that Lightforged priest, I think at the moment her and the mage are the front runners as possible alternates to the Death Knight. It would be quite hard to get me away from the Death Knight long term, because I'm very attached to her. I have an argument with one of my friends, Nessalate, who says, "Hank, it's just pixels." Like, it's not just pixels, man. It's 11 years of my life in those pixels, and I love her, and I have, a deep emotional connection with this character. So, yeah, she will certainly, I would imagine, until we get to like 9.1, she will be the character that I am playing the most. When we get to that point and the rest of the guys that I run them, I mean, we don't raid really, we tend to stick to mythic dungeons. So when we get to that point, if it looks like we need a healer or a ranged more, then it is likely that I would switch. But yeah, we'll see. I can't put her down. I can't put the Death Knight down for too long. It hurts me. Even though I'm sort of leveling this mage quite hard at the moment, when Thursday nights roll around, which is our kind of like weekly get together to run mythics, it's the Death Knight that I go to first. So yeah, I can't ignore her, and she always gets the best transmogs, the best outfits. She's the one that gets all the achievements and all that kind of stuff, so that would definitely carry on. Yeah,
I think that's fair enough. You get quite attached to, I guess if it's your main character for a long time, you do get attached to them. I know how that feels.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's, technically she's my online identity now as well, so I'd be a bit screwed if I let her go.
I know. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, let's jump back into what for you was the start. So, Ralph, how did you get into World of Warcraft? What pushed you into that?
I had a bit of a hangover. Back in, I don't drink anymore. I don't drink alcohol anymore. But back then, it was coming out of, it had been New Year, and it was either like the day after New Year's or like a couple of days after, and we'd been to a party or something. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I know it was New Year, 2009. and I'd seen the adverts for Wrath of the Lich King featuring William Shatner, and I am a Star Trek fan, and I was like, what is this? I'll go and have a look. And so I downloaded the game, did the 10-day trial, and I think by about day 3 or 4, like, I hadn't really looked up from my computer, and I was in, don't know where, might have been a bit late. Anyway, I remember being in Lakeshire in Redridge and asking for some help with this quest. And this guy, whose character name was Andy Coops, and his character is still called Andy Coops because he's just come back to the game. I'm really chuffed he's come back. Anyway, he said, I'll help you. And then through him, we got to know the guild that he was in, and that was kind of it. I was like, yeah, I'm in. Sign me up. Where do I pay my money? And that was it. I got my, and we were terrible. What were we playing at that time? So he was a warrior, I was a warrior, and I've got an awful feeling that, so my former husband, I think he was on a pally. So we were 3 plate wearers. He might even have been a rep pally. We didn't have a clue obviously we had no idea what we were doing because we were running dead mines. We didn't have an allotted tank. We were just going in, hitting stuff. We'd take a healer and, I don't know, a rogue, whatever we could find. And we'd just go into dead mines or wherever. But through Andy Coops, I met the guild that he was in. And that's when I realised, that's when sort of the world opened up. And I saw all these, learnt all these amazing people were there, and how the end game worked and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. This is really cool. But I was one of the world's, I used to be a very slow leveler. I still can be a very slow leveler because I read all the lore text on all the quests, and I love doing that. But I was also a very prolific chatter in my guild chat, to the point that I earned the nickname Queen of CPS. Not Queen of DPS, Queen of CPS, which is chat per second. And that slowed me down as well, because I was just having so much fun talking to these new people and learning about them and sharing jokes and having a good time and chatting in pod chat. And this was sort of, I mean, we're talking like 10, 11 years ago. And there were things like, what was one of, I think TeamSpeak was one of the first ones we used, and Mumble. But at that point, we weren't doing any of that. So the only way you could talk to people was in-game. So yeah, I had a bit of a reputation for spamming guild chat.
Hey, that's better than having those guilds that are just silent.
Yeah.
I'd rather see a lot of green than
Yeah.
nothing at all.
No, that guild was never silent. If there were a couple of other people in that used to chat with me, that was it.
So when was that point for you that you thought, okay, I love this game, I will play this for the rest of my life?
I think, well, once I'd got the subscription and I started playing through, and then I got Demi. When I got Demi to max level back in Wrath, and it took me until the July, so it was a long old road. And then I got put in a raid group, and I was made the raid leader, and I didn't actually want to be the raid leader.
Okay.
And it was only because I was outspoken and, kind of extroverted that I got pulled out to be the raid leader. So that bit didn't work out. But then I joined a different raid team, still with the same people in the same guild. And although we might have changed guild names by then, I don't know. And I did love the game up until this point, but when I started tanking in ICC on a death night, I just felt it was brilliant. And I think that was... I mean, I probably have got rosy-coloured glasses on looking back at it, but it was that sense of camaraderie, of working towards something with these people, of really having to take responsibility for your character in a way. And yeah, okay, you can do that in real life, but it's nowhere near as fun as bashing pixelated dragons in the face. And I think that was at a point where I started to really take notice of the lore a lot more. I read up, like, I don't think I've read all the novels, but I've certainly read most of them, and I started with the Arthas novel. And that was really when it started all to solidify, and I was like, this is an incredible universe, really. And I realised how rich and deep the story was, and the fact that these NPCs that you see around, some of them are based on real people, and they, you know, and others aren't based on real people but still have an amazing backstory. And like Sky Admiral Rogers, who absolutely hates the Horde because her family are from South Shore, you know, and she's a character that you don't see very often, but you know her backstory, and it's quite powerful, her backstory. You know, she's really really angry and wants revenge, you know, and in a few voice lines she gets that across. So learning about those characters and the stories, and that's what ICC and figuring out the lore was just where everything went. Oh, I love this place.
Which is great, because, you know, there's nothing worse than playing a game that you don't really enjoy anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's jump to a little bit more back, I guess. Even though you're a Wrath baby, were you very interested in going to check out Classic and being active in there when it launched?
I was interested, but I would have to say I am a certified tourist. I don't have any level 60s. I have probably my highest level is, I think, 23 maybe. And I have a lot of characters in Classic on various servers that I go and pick up and play with other people and then go back to retail. And I think the problem probably for me is, up until this point, up until sort of COVID and everything kicking off, it was very hard to actually leave your character in a safe space in Classic and then just go. You can't, it's not really something you can dip into for 20 minutes or half an hour and feel that you've achieved very much. You know, you might move between zones in that time. And when I do get a good solid chunk of time, I do enjoy it. I have a character. Because of Classic, I went and got a North American account, so I could play with people over there as well. But I would have to say I'm a certified tourist. I like dipping back into it. I adore Westfall, like original in quotation marks. Westfall is my favourite zone, even though it killed my hardcore paladin. I like dipping back into it, and I appreciate the community atmosphere that's in there, and seeing people. I wouldn't say they behave better in Classic, because there are still, you know, you can ninja loot in Classic. You can't do that in retail anymore. There are still people that are shitheads, but it's almost. It's not quite accurate, but there's almost a sense of innocence in Classic, if that makes sense. And I like going in and seeing that and appreciating that. And in many ways, I wish there was more of that in retail. But I'm not in any way a hardcore Classic player. I'd love to kid myself that I could get to 60 and get to Nax, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a different ball game, I think, Classic.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, it's a whole different game. You know, when people say to me, "Oh, you like retail?" I'm like, "Hang on a minute. It's the same universe. It's just a very different. It is a different style of play. You may have the same classes, but your talent trees are completely different. Your gear is not the same. You can't just go and randomly buy all of your training because you won't have the gold to get every single spell. You've got to prioritize stuff, and
exactly.
It is essentially the same. It's almost like it's the same frame, but they've hung different stuff off it. And it's the same universe, but that's kind of where the similarity ends, really. The gameplay is completely different.
Yeah, and I think, not everyone, I think and I keep saying this, like when Classic came out 15 years ago, my life was completely different than it is now. And I think people's priorities shift a bit, and I think some people, like me, I'm just talking for myself now, like I don't have time anymore, because if I do something in the game, I want either instant gratification for it, and I don't want to spend an hour trying to get one level, and then, thinking...
Or even a quarter of a level.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's more satisfying in Classic, I will give it that. It does feel more like you've achieved something, but I don't have that time set aside anymore. I can't do that anymore. That's a closed chapter. And I find that very difficult when I jump back into it to put myself not back into that mode I was 15 years ago. Because I can see myself slipping into that as soon as I do it. I'm like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing all-nighters because you're too old now. You get grumpy and you can't do that.
Nobody can sit in a bloody office chair or a gamer chair all night.
No,
my knees and ankles, my hips, man. No.
I start creaking everywhere. Yeah. I can't do that. Okay, so let's jump into BFA. What would you say is your current obsession to do in the game?
Well, I think we probably touched on this talking about the alts. It is definitely getting the alts leveled and experiencing those different classes. And yes, there's an argument that you're missing out on the leveling experience by having heirlooms, Winds of Wisdom, Flask of the Blasted Lands, or whatever it is. But I've done that. I've leveled several characters through the leveling experience as it was intended at the time. I have, and I'm quite happy now to speed level as many characters as I can in the time that I've got. So yeah, that's probably my current obsession. I absolutely adore the Void Elf Mage and the Lightforged Priest that I've got. I was never much of a fan of the Draenei before. Not that, just for me personally. But the Lightforged Priest made sense. And I didn't want to change my Night Elf Priest from Shadow back to healing, because I was just like, if I step into a dungeon at 120 and I've just changed my talents and I don't really know what I'm doing, I don't want to let other people down. So I thought I'll just level in dungeons, because you start at level 20 anyway on an allied race, so you can jump straight in. One of my friends, one of my bestest gaming friends, Zetronex, said, well, okay, I'll have a tank. So we literally, he's on a monk tank, I'm on a priest healer, and because we queue together for dungeons, it's insta queue. This is like, we do one, we go and do another, we do one, we go and do another. And it's been a lot of fun. And I think because I've got a tank that I trust, even though he does like to troll me sometimes and pull more mobs than he knows I can heal him through. But, it's a lot of fun because we're on Discord chatting to each other and we're swearing, and I scream, I'm like, why have you done that? I can't possibly heal you. Or, if I do something stupid, he'll be like, can I get some heals, please? I'm like, I am healing you. Can I get some heals, please? I am healing you. And then it turns out I've got somebody else targeted. Oh, yeah. And I try, I looked at healing add-ons. I think with Healbot I tried, and I didn't like it. I don't like this. I'd rather click on you, and I'd like tried different macros and things like on my mouse buttons and all, and I was like, no, this is too much. So I just went back to clicking on him, and making sure that I got him targeted and whatnot, and it's fine. But yeah, so definitely the alts. It is a lot of fun, and I don't need to see the content on those characters. The mage has gone through a couple of zones to help with Lore Master, but to be honest, half the time even when you're doing, what was it? I think I was doing I was doing Darkshire on her. I did Darkshire and Stranglethorn on her, and even only sort of halfway through those zones, you got the quest pop to send you to the next zone. I was like, no, I'm staying here. I'm going to stay here and finish this zone. And did she ding? I'm trying to remember where she dinged 60. We didn't get to Western Plaguelands. She might even have dinged 60 through Stranglethorn Vale. But yeah, so you're just doing bits and pieces like that, but it's, yeah, she's flown through the zones as well. I think it might be 36 or 40 hours playtime on her, and for me that's really fast.
Okay. Yeah, I know what it is, especially with the buff up, you just want to make most of it really before Shadowlands hits. Yeah. Okay, so Shadowlands is in alpha, hopefully soon in beta, and then hopefully launch this year. I'm still hoping, fingers crossed, that we get a launch this year. So what are your feelings and thoughts regarding Shadowlands?
Oh, I'm very, very, very excited.
How come?
Well, as somebody who loves Death Knight lore, and as a Bolvar loyalist on the Death Knight side, because we do split into Arthas loyalists and Bolvar loyalists. I am a Bolvar loyalist. The fact that there is that, obviously with the trailer for Shadowlands, Bolvar, you had one job. He gets his ass whooped by Sylvanas, and then obviously if you've pre-ordered Shadowlands, you can access the allied race Death Knight starting area. And as a fan of Bolvar, he's in there because obviously Arthas can't raise the Death Knights anymore. So there is a lot. It's only I've played through it 7 times, I think, and it's only about 10 minutes worth. But it made me ask so many questions. And I was just like, oh my god, there's going to be loads of Death Knight stuff. And then, of course, you get Maldraxxus, which is the home of the Helm of Domination. And I'm like, oh, this could be there could be some really juicy Death Knight stuff in this. So I think there's... And the fact that the world shatters above ICC. For somebody who is interested in Death Knight lore, there's got to be some juicy stuff coming. There's got to be. And if there isn't, I'm going to be really upset, and I will feel very gypped by Blizzard if there isn't some serious Death Knight stuff. I'm hoping for a lot of Bolvar stuff and a lot of Darian Mograine stuff. But we'll see what happens. I mean, those are the things that I'm most excited about, I think, so far. I mean, we talked a little bit in the pre-show about what, I've watched some people streaming it, but I've only watched them play through the zones. I've not watched, I've not seen any of the broadcast text, or I've seen some of the character models, but I haven't done it. I've stayed away from broadcast text. I've stayed away largely from quest text. I haven't really paid attention to that. I'm very excited about Torghast as well. I've seen some gameplay through that, and that looks awesome. That looks really interesting. So yeah, there's a lot to be excited about, I think.
That's good. If that's the general consensus, I think from a lot of people, then we're on hopefully on a good path. If Blizzard makes it that way as well. I know that sounds really, but let's hope it's a good one. Okay, so you talked a little bit about the covenants already. So let's say that it's your Death Knight that goes through everything first. Which covenant will you be picking?
Oh, well, she's definitely Necrolords and Maldraxxus.
Okay.
I couldn't see her. She wouldn't be comfortable with Bastion. In my head canon, she actually has a fear of the light.
Okay.
She she has a fear of the light. So anything sort of paladin-like or priest-like or like Tyrion Fordring, she had to like step back from. She couldn't cope with him. So yeah, she couldn't go to Bastion. Revendreth, I mean, it's vampires, so it's I understand it, and it looks very gothic. But for her, I mean, Ardenweald is not. Although I think it looks stunning, it wouldn't feel right for her. You know, she's an unholy Death Knight. She's not going to be planting flowers and helping sprites. That's not her thing. I mean, for the alts, like my warrior, definitely Bastion. That fits with her. She's also named after a Greek goddess. She's called Heronoth. So,
I love it.
So that fits for her. You know, she'll be like, oh, it's my Greek mythological home. I'm perfectly fine here. Druid will go through Ardenweald because, again, you know, she's a druid. That fits. That's fine, and it means that I get to see them all and experience them that way. And probably, I had originally thought that my warlock would go through Revendreth, but I don't really know that I'll level the warlock initially, so it'll probably be the void elf that goes through there. And that's because I have headcanon for them all. I'm not on an RP server, but I do have RP for my characters, so that's just what fits with them. The Lightforged will be Bastion as well.
I find that so interesting to hear as an RPer, and I keep saying that I find it so interesting to hear from what it seems that you don't pick your covenants for your characters on abilities at the moment. I know that for some people it changes and they go like, well, if it really nerfs my character, yeah, I might change. But I've heard, I think the gross of people say I pick for what I aesthetically like most and what fits my character, and I find that really interesting to hear from a lot of non-RPers. So yeah, I'm happy that Blizzard can make you almost immerse more in your character that way. So I think that's a brilliant way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, you know, I never played an MMO before, or you know, or really been aware. I mean, I may have played RPGs. I may look back and say, oh yeah, that was actually an RPG. I didn't know about tanking, DPS, or healing. I didn't know that those were things in games. And the RP side of it, in terms of this is a character that I play that is, you know, something that I have created a story around. I'd never encountered that before, but I don't know if it was fluke or that I just enjoy creating characters. All of my characters have some kind of headcanon and story. The Death Knight, the warrior, and then so I've got a human warrior and I've also got an undead warrior. And in my head, the undead warrior, the human warrior, and the human Death Knight are three sisters who all had different fates under the Scourge. You know, but I have headcanon for them. I've got one character on an RP server and then on the NA account, and I wish that my biggest regret is that I didn't roll on an RP server to start with.
Okay,
but I am where I am now, and I wouldn't leave Sleepy Terracar because it's where everybody I know is.
Yeah, sometimes I wish that we had like one big mega server like Elder Scrolls has, It would make it easy, because even there you can find the role players are on the role play area anyway, so it's a shame. But I also think still it's a shame that we're split between EU and America. I guess you can't have it all. I don't think the servers would be able to cope with that anymore.
No, I don't think they would. But I mean, I don't know how long I'll keep up with the North American account. As I'm not very active on there, but it is nice to know that if I want to go and play with those people, I can go and do it. I mean, time zones are also an absolute pain in the backside, but you know, it's nice to have that option and to know that I've got a 110 character there that I can just dip into, who's also a Death Knight called to himself. So, you know, I could go and level her, and probably, you know, if I stuck her in a load of dungeons, she'd probably be 120 within like 5 hours or something. So I could go and do. I mean, she hasn't got any heirlooms or anything, but I could still probably get her through quite quick. So yeah, I mean, with the people that I've met through the streaming and through Twitter, sort of more recently this time round, and the one thing that we all say is, if only there was a server that we could all play on together. But I suppose, you know, in some ways it might be for the best, because I don't know if I'd ever stop playing if there was like people all around the world coming on, or, you know, there's, oh, so-and-so's awake now, I'll go and play with them. Oh, so-and-so's awake now, I'll go and play with them.
You have to start making schedules for when you're going to play and talk.
Yeah. I'd probably only ever stop to, like, take care of the child.
Well, it's a good enough reason.
Yeah, and if you're going to stop playing computer games, childcare is probably the good reason.
Okay. Now, another thing that they introduced that's going to be a bit different is the leveling experience. So, as you say, you know, you're already leveling and alting a lot. But say that with Shadowlands, you're like, you know what? I really need another alt. I know I'll probably fall into that category. So, you want another alt. This time around, it goes, I think what they said, I don't know if it's true, but they said, oh yeah, we'll go 3 times as fast. You know, if you want, you can now level through an entire expansion, because, and this is the example I always give, you know, I'm leveling with Azeroth Autopilot, and I literally am only spending in Pandaria maybe 10 quests, and then I have to go to Draenor.
Yeah.
So, you know, now you can choose, okay, well, I want to spend my entire time in Mist of Pandaria or in Wrath of the Lich King. Do you see yourself playing it that way, or are you going to have a little bit of everything, or do you want to go through one expansion? And if so, what is the reason for that? Is it because you're like, this is my favorite expansion, or this is what would fit for my character?
Well, I've kept some of the alts back for this reason, because I knew that I would want to go through and experience some of those places in full, if you like, because I don't think even back when I was leveling in Wrath, I didn't do all of BC. I'm sure I didn't do all of BC, and I can't remember anything that happened in it now. So I would actually like to go and level through BC. That's one of the zones that I would like to do. Wrath, I've done a fair amount recently, and I have I actually reserved that for my Death Knights. Because it, you know, even though like my Nightborn Death Knight technically wouldn't have been a Death Knight then, whatever, I'll break law for that, you know, it feels like the right place for a Death Knight to be. So I currently have a Dwarf, a Nightborn, and a Pandaren DK ready around. I think the Dwarf's 67 and the other 2 are literally just out of the Death Knight starting zone. So they will probably go through Wrath. And then any other alts, it's quite likely to be Mists and Legion. Because I think the Legion class halls are some of the best experiences I've ever had in the game. The mage is just going through her class hall now. I've done the warrior, priest, Death Knight, obviously, Rogue. The druid has still got to go through hers. The warlock and the demon hunter need to go through theirs. But to be honest, the warlock's the first one where I kind of went, oh, I don't like this. And it's an aesthetic thing. That's all it is.
Okay.
The rogue one was my favourite. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Very on brand for rogues. So I think they'll go through Mists because it's aesthetically, for me personally, it is the most beautiful expansion. Jade Forest, although Westfall is my all-time favourite zone, Jade Forest blows me away every single time. Like going back now, flying through there for the assaults in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. I don't want to go and do the assaults. I just want to sit in the Jade Forest because it's just stunning. There will be some through that. I don't know if I'll take any characters through WoD. I've done some of the levelling on the alts in there, and it did strike me that actually it wasn't as terrible as I remembered it. But that might be because I didn't have to spend very long there. And I'm unlikely to put anything through BFA at this point because it's still so fresh. Even though it's 2 years, as a levelling experience, I've done it a lot now. So that's, I will use that tool for sure. I think it would be very useful, particularly for lore master reasons, to go through and get stuff. Because that's now, you don't have to do it on the one character. I think that would be amazing. But I actually surprised myself when I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do BC.
Well, I don't find it that surprising because I started doing BC as well, even though, every guide says you need to go to Northrend now. I'm like, nah, I'm going BC now.
It's I think I took the mage there, and I've been using Azeroth Autopilot as well. Fantastic little add-on. I've been using that with the mage, and I went to BC, and I've turned it off at various points as well to complete zones. And I started in BC, and it was just taking so long, and I was like, I just can't. I want to get out of Hellfire, so I turned it on, went to Zangarmarsh. Did almost all of Zangarmarsh, but it then told me you need to move on now. So I think if I can go back and spend the time there and soak it up, and also because you get to see Khadgar before he comes back as Dadgar. You see a bit more of his history and like the Sons of Lothar, and all that kind of lore. And although I haven't been a big fan of playing Draenei, it was mainly because I didn't like their starting zone. Like the stories of them and the story of the Temple of Karabor, which then becomes the Black Temple, and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of shit that happened on Outland before it blew up, and it's an interesting place, So I agree. I would like to go back and see it now that I know more about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. Because also because of expansions like Legion and BFA and everything, the fact that the Naga were there, the Blood Elves kill Fuss, and then you have the whole Draenei stories, and you get Draenor later on, so you can compare them. And I think that you need to see basically Burning Crusade as well to see what it was, and then all of a sudden, so this is what it's like when it's restored, and it all looks how it was before it just imploded. I think it's a very interesting expansion, and especially also because you have Lady Vash there and everything that the Naga do there. I think it's a lot of people don't like it, and I understand why, because Burning Crusade was the first expansion. It was one of those things that, back in the day it was great. Now you're like, that could have done probably a little bit better.
Wasn't it an expansion because they'd originally wanted it to be part of vanilla or original or whatever you want to call it, and they hadn't been able to fit it in. I'm sure I heard somewhere that's what they did.
That would not surprise me. And it still has that old vanilla way of questing.
Yeah.
That you're like, okay, I need something from that guy literally over there.
Yeah,
but you
on the other side of the zone, way off in the distance.
Like, okay, and it's just like, I just have to talk, okay, right. Yeah. It's not efficient like you have in current stuff. Like from, I think, it was WoD that it started to become a lot better. And yeah, it still shows, but I don't know, it has its charm, and that's probably also my rose-colored goggles a little bit.
No, I think there's charm there, and it's a different pace of leveling. I mean, obviously, I don't know how they're going to structure it when we get to Shadowlands, if they'll remove that and it will become more like... they will have to streamline some stuff. I'm sure they will. Mm-hmm. And there'll probably be more flight points in zones, and there'll probably be more, not necessarily linear questing, but a hub that you go out from and then you go back to, rather than go over to the other side of Hellfire Peninsula and do this quest and then come back to Honorhold and then go out in the other direction and do a quest and then go back out to the place you originally came from.
Yeah.
And get knocked over by the Fell Reaver. All that kind of stuff. So I'm sure they will have to streamline it. They can't just leave it as is and scale it, I would imagine. Because it won't sit with the rest of it, but who knows?
Yeah, it will be interesting to see when Shadowlands finally gets to become live, and we can start playing through it. Okay, so considering you're very much in the lore, and that you said about the third faction, I'm very curious how you feel about the current two factions. So Horde and Alliance, sort of at peace. I'd like to say there's a ceasefire, I guess. I'm sure there are some instigators who are itching to start the fight again. I'm not naming any names. But how do you feel about the factions and the faction war and where we're at?
I mean, as a player, it's very cyclical. That's the game that, it has to be, because it's the nature of the game. It's called World of Warcraft. We have to have war with somebody. And as a story device, I understand that that's what they have to do. I think coming in Wrath, when there was a kind of truce at the time to defeat the Lich King, and then we went into Cata, and then Mists, where we were back at war, and it is very cyclical. I understand why it's there. I'm not that bothered either way. My character's feelings are... My Death Knight is a bit more not bothered either now, because she's been around for, in my headcanon again, she's been around for so long and she's seen all this stuff, and she's just like, okay, I'll go and have a rest and I'll semi-retire, and then you can call me back when there's another war, whatever. I role-play my night elf as actually quite a young night elf, and quite she's quite xenophobic, really. So she's very much, she is down with Tyrande right now. She is, I am having no shit from the Horde. I am going out to kill them. They're all bastards. Nobody can do anything. She's very much Horde versus Alliance, and everybody's got to die on the Horde. And that's fine. That gives me an interesting way to play the game. But yeah, as me personally, it's a story device, and that's as far as I go. Except for Garrosh, who can get the fuck out.
Fair enough. Okay. Not a completely different question, but something that we've already talked about quite a lot, and because of your podcast. But I really want to know what the Warcraft community has meant to you? Because it seems to be quite an important thing, considering you want to create a whole podcast about it. But what has it meant to you personally, on like a personal level?
I am very emotionally attached to the Warcraft community, really. When I first started playing World of Warcraft, I was married, and unfortunately, for various reasons, that marriage didn't work out. But the Warcraft community on Twitter, when I was going through the breakdown of that relationship and the subsequent, not so much the divorce, but the actual sort of breakdown of that relationship, and feeling very lost in myself. I really didn't know who I was for a long time. And this is probably also why I've got so wrapped up in the character of Demeter. A lot of those people were there for me, and you know, I remember, this is awful, thank God I'm not employed by this person anymore, but I remember sitting at my desk at work and I couldn't do anything. I was so I was basically a bit broken, and all I would do was talk to people on Twitter, you know, and I to this day I don't know how I managed to keep that job down whilst doing no work. But the Warcraft community on Twitter, just by chatting to me about this game and posting blogs and, you know, distractions and stuff, they gave me somewhere else to go and to be, and kind of accepted my rage when I was really not a happy person. And, you know, that those people saw me through that very difficult time. And then when I came home in the evening and I'd be playing World of Warcraft, the people in my guild and, you know, just kept me going. And through World of Warcraft, I met my son's father, who is also Dutch. I mean, we're not together anymore. That relationship breakdown was even more traumatic. I think partly because I'd basically fallen into a relationship with him far too quickly after the breakdown of the marriage. And again, it was two wonderful women who I know through my guild, through raiding with them, who day after day were there on Google Hangouts to listen to me pour my heart out. You know, and obviously this isn't to diminish the real life friendships that I have, but when all your friends are off at work and you've just started working from home and your friends all work in offices, but there's these two women who are, I think one of them was on maternity leave at the time and the other one wasn't working because she was raising her children. They were there to talk to me. You know, and those people have supported me through some of the most difficult times in my life. And with my son's father, everything's fine. We get on all right now. He even surprisingly featured on the stream not long ago because he FaceTimed me while I was streaming. I went, "Do you want to go live to the world?" And just turned him around. He didn't have any choice. But you know, we have guild meetups this year because of COVID. Is the first time we won't meet up in 10 years. Yeah, and that's pretty sad, really, that I won't get to see those people. But you know, I've been to 10-year wedding anniversaries from friends in Sweden because I met them through World of Warcraft. I have friends in America because of World of Warcraft. I have friends in Vietnam and Australia and all around the EU because of World of Warcraft. I started streaming because somebody said to me, "You play World of Warcraft and you light up when you talk about it, so why don't you stream it?" And now we're doing the podcast, and there's so many good, helpful, friendly, warm people in this community, and we all know it because we're in it and we talk about it. That I think we need to keep sharing that light and casting the spotlight on those people like you, who are talking about these things, because there's so much shit in the world.
Yes.
And there is equally some shit people in computer games. We know that. But if we can share the good stuff, talk about how to overcome the bad stuff, because it's important that we acknowledge that it still happens and that there are bad things that happen, but give people the tools to get over it, and talk about the good places in the community. Or I know you spoke to Chumpa Chump, that his stream community is phenomenal. They're a lovely bunch of people, and I've made loads of friends through his community. I've never met the guy. We just happened to come across each other on Twitter, and then we caught each other's streams, and we're both from I'm from the Midlands in England, but he's from North England, and we just chatted, and there's quite a lot of similarities in our attitudes towards things, and I miss not catching his streams now, and that there are lots of people like that out there that not only deserve to have themselves promoted, but also I think people deserve to know that there's these good communities and that there's these good spaces to be in where it's safe and fun, and you can share dick jokes, or you can go to a stream where there's nobody swearing, all of that. But yeah, I mean, for me, the Warcraft community is, it helped me at two very difficult points in my life. And particularly after the marriage broke down, the people within that community made me realise I'd been hiding a lot of myself, and helped me re-establish my own identity again, really. And obviously I have an IRL name, but my IRL persona is not that much different from my online Demeternoth persona. It'd be very hard to fake a persona for this long. And yeah, the fact that I have made lifelong friends in my guild, that the fact that I can't meet them this year, we would have been meeting in about a month, 3 weeks. And the fact that we're not going to do that is making us all very sad. So, it's awesome. I love it. It means everything to me.
Well, that's a good way of summarizing it. I do like that. I do like the stories that make it so. I think everyone has something that they can relate to. There's absolute highs and absolute lows with everything. But yeah, the fact that the community has been there, that's a great thing.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, a bit of a lighter question.
We got deep, man. We got deep.
We got really deep. So we're making it really light and fluffy again. So, what's your favorite in-game food?
Oh, Fish Feast. The good old Fish Feast. Yeah.
How come?
I just have very strong, happy memories attached to it. And probably, what's the other one? Is it Goblin Gumbo that makes you puke, like green rainbows or something? But those two, just the Fish Feast was always, pre-raid. That's what you had in ICC. You had Fish Feast. And I think, yeah, it's just very fond memories. And Goblin Gumbo, because that's what my friend Verdi still gets out every time we go to Mythic Dungeons.
Okay, I like those answers. Right, Demi, we've come to the final question of the show. So I'm really curious about your whisper. Now, for people who this is the first time they listen to this show, go what the fuck is a whisper? Well, I'm still wondering what that is, but in all fairness, it's my failed experiment question. So a whisper can be anything. It could be something you just want to say about the game. So maybe a wish for the game that you wish that they would put in, or maybe mechanics that you want them to remove. A bit of fairy crafting about the story, and maybe certain lore characters you want to see put back in, Shadowlands, you never know. So, Demi, what is your whisper?
Well, I don't have the... If they were gonna let us see anybody in Shadowlands, I'd like to see Virion, because he was like my king, he was my king, and I would like to see him again. But the biggest thing that I would really like is that Bolvar has some kind of peaceful end to his story. I very much doubt where he's going to get it, unfortunately. But yeah, I would really like to see Bolvar have a peaceful end. And I mean, he sat on the Iron Throne, not the Iron Throne. That's Game of Thrones. God, he sat on the Frozen Throne longer than Arthas did in game time. And I would just think the guy needs some kind of peaceful resolution. His daughter's in the game, We've seen the Shadowlands trailer. We know that something major is going to go down. There've been a few little tidbits this week through the Maldraxxus Zone, which I'm not going to discuss, but that make me think, oh no, Bolvar, oh no. And I just, for once, can we have somebody who doesn't, Thrall didn't get a peaceful end, did he? He's been dragged back in this X-Pack, Jaina never seems to get a rest. Her story's gone up and down and up and down. Sylvanas is either going to end up, she's going to end up dead one way or another, but that's not exactly going to be peaceful either. I don't think there's really any character that has had a peaceful end. You could argue that Tyrion Fordring is at peace now, but he certainly didn't die in a peaceful way.
No.
And neither did Virion. So, I would like Bolvar to have some kind of peaceful resolution to his story, really. And I'd like Tearsets back.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that one.
Yeah, I want to walk around. What is it? Is it Oribos, the capital that we get in Shadowlands? I want to walk around there in a tier set that lets people know that I have done some serious shit and I am fucking cool.
Yeah, I like that, and just tier sets, class identity.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, the class identity is definitely up there for sure.
Okay, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Right, Demi, this is it. So thank you so much for being an amazing guest.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Good. So if people want to, fling all the messages at you and go like, I want to be a guest on your show, where can you give all the links and where they can find you?
Well, you can find me and Bricko on Twitter and the show on Twitter as well. So I am Demeternoth, which is DEMETERNOTH. Bricko is on Bricko Stud, which is BRICCOSTUD. And then the show, which is the third faction show and will be launching in July, woohoo, is the number 3 RD, so that's third faction show on Twitter. And we've got, we'll have email and everything else going as well, but for the time being, probably Twitter's the best place to find us.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that all those Twitter names and everything, that the links are also in the show notes.
Oh, thank you.
Not a problem. And again, thank you so much for being an amazing guest.
It's been my pleasure.
So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Demi. It's always so lovely talking to her, and I think we're both lamenting now on Twitter how it sucks that we haven't got Shadows Rising available to us just yet. I think she's just been as determined as me, and I think she went through German websites as well to see if she could get it from Audible there, but no luck. We've tried it all, people, unfortunately. Anyhow, talking about books, let's talk about what your favorite novels out there are for World of Warcraft. Of course, I also account for the comics, because I think some of them are very valid. I know that some people don't like the comics because of Madan. That's all I'm going to say. So, let's see what you guys replied on Twitter. Demi actually said, The Last Guardian. Even though the Corona Medivh bit has been retconned, I still love that story. Yeah, I love the original in The Last Guardian, if I'm honest. I don't know how I feel about what they did in the movie. That's a different thing. So, yeah. Kristen said, Jaina Proudmoore, Tides of War is my favorite. Jaina is my favorite character, and that book broke my heart in the best of ways. My other favorite is Arthas, simply for the story of Jaina and Arthas, because I love a good love story, even though their story ended badly. Yeah, I think Arthas was that was a very, very good book. I think as an alone, on its own standing version, pretty good. Colleen said, Arthas, his character arc was so well done, letting you see his reasoning and motivations for doing the things he did in such a way as to make that character even more unforgettable for me. And his relationship with Jaina added a whole other aspect that made it even better. Yeah, a lot of love for the Arthas book, and I get it. It was really, really well written. Nick said, war crimes, turning WoW into a courtroom drama sounds like a crazy premise, but it totally works, and Bane is the best lawyer. That's actually really, yeah, I forgot about war crimes, but indeed it is very much a courtroom drama, and I quite liked it as well. Jarv said, Arthas, because it goes into great detail about the past of the Lich King, and it was written by Christie Golden. Love her books. Christie is a very good writer, I agree with that. Arctic Anomaly said, I really love Arthas, Rise of the Lich King, but would it be cheating to say Chronicles of War? Those 4 books make a perfect story, and for me, really sets the bar for Warcraft books. I think Chronicles of War, as much as they are... I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's not like really a history book or anything like that. It's also sort of like a history fiction kind of sort of setting book. It's difficult. But no, I agree. The Chronicles are incredibly cool to read through and to read some of the lore stories in there as well. So yeah, I agree. I think it's not cheating. It's not cheating. Gitty said, too hard to choose one, but if I have to, it would be Rise of the Horde. It was my first one and it got me hooked into the story. I've read all of them since. I'm really excited for Shadows Rising as well. Well, Gitty, I can't remember if you are situated in the UK, but if so, yeah, I'm sorry for that. If not, you're probably already reading it. Gentleman Mai said, I'm currently reading Illidan, and I'm in love with it, but Tides of War had me an emotional wreck. I think many people were an emotional wreck after that book. So yeah, it is one of those books that is very, very emotional. So definitely a lot of books there that you can start. I didn't hear anyone say War of the Ancients. It's an interesting book. It's not a bad book. I am not a big fan of time travel. And it does seem like, even though we have Chromium, I know that it's a thing with the dragons, but I don't like books like that, if I'm honest. I think Ancients of War is not a bad one to have, especially if I want to know more about Night Elf lore. I think, personally, my favourite, besides the books that Christie Golden did, because I quite liked Before the Storm, because it gave you a little bit more insight in the characters, and Arthas, of course. I really enjoyed Illidan because it was grittier and darker than any of the other books. Like, especially the first couple of 100 pages, certain things made me even feel a little bit queasy with how it was described. So, yeah, I definitely think if you have any interest in Demon Hunters, then that is a very good book to read, if only because you get also 2 storylines a little bit. And yeah, I thought it was a great book. Really, really enjoyed that. And yeah, so that's it. And thank you so much for bearing with me, because I know it's late. The show is always late lately. I'm just, I don't know what's going on, guys. Either I'm getting sick, or it's just, I think it's just being in the house for so long now. It's starting to get to me. Anyhow, thank you all for listening. And of course, if you want to find out more, please go to the following links: whispersofwar.podbean.com for all the old shows, the show notes, and all that fun stuff. Go to dragonpoweredstudio.com/Discord if you want to be part of the Discord group. I think people are going to be killed tonight on Among Us. So if you want to be part of that, I think it's not just for the podcasters. I think it's for everyone. But yeah, come join us for games and all those lovely things. Twitter at whispers_of_war, or my personal one, which is McMonkeys with a Z. The email is whispersofwarpodcast@gmail.com for any longer messages that you want to send me. Or maybe, you want to send me, I don't know, no dick pics, but pictures of your pets, that's fine as well. And Twitch, of course, I'm still streaming twitch.tv/McMonkeys with 2 Zs. Fair enough, I was going to stream this weekend, but my body said no. So hopefully this week I will have, enough energy to do so. Anyhow, I want to wish you guys a happy week with or without your books. Let's hope they find a solution for that. But yeah, guys, I will talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.
This show is brought to you by Dragon Powered Studio. Find more at dragonpoweredstudio.com.